Why do I keep being torn, caught up by all my demons, lost without the love, and I'm a slave to...
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition of On the Line Life Stories, where I speak to some incredible individuals who are related to Aston Villa in some manner about their life stories. And today I have Richard Griffiths on, a passionate Aston Villa fan, and the father of Tom Griffiths, who, by the way, is such an inspirational figure within the Villa community, who's had to battle through leukemia. So Richard, I really appreciate you coming on.
Well, and again, thank you for having me on, and obviously on the channel as well. So thank you.
It's been a busy Christmas period. It hasn't been the same as normal Christmases as we know it. But one thing that has been the same is the festive period, the game upon games, the busy schedule that is all these games being crammed into December. And of course, we have just played Crystal Palace. The result was Aston Villa 3, Palace 0. What are your thoughts on that game? Because in my opinion, overall, it was a fantastic performance.
I think the second half particularly was probably our performance of the season for a 45. I think Mings sending off, albeit a bit soft. He should be knowing better in that scenario. Zaha was he was always going to wind him up, unfortunately, and obviously got the better of him. But I think that the thing that pleased me the most was, it's just before half time. We're all thinking it's going to be a long second half, but actually watching it was carry on from the first half, if not better. And I'm delighted really for Courtney Hall's more than anyone else out of that second half, because other than his debut against Brentford, he's done a good job since whenever he's been asked to come into the team for us. And if he has another 90 minutes like that, there's some competition now at centre-back, which is something we've been wanting for a while. So I'm delighted for him. Target is improving slowly through time. He's getting better and better, and yesterday we saw that as well. And it's also nice to have a striker that, just grafts and grafts and grafts. The goal will come for Watkins. There's no denying it. And then I was laughing my socks off when he hit the post, and then the chance at the end. But he deserved man of the match. And it's just great to see us fighting. And if you hark back to sort of myself a year ago on Villa being asked, questioning Smith's sort of tactical decisions and things like that, he's stepped up to the plate this season. He really has, and fair play to him. He's done great, and he's got us in the top 6 position. And I'm as I said anything not higher than 15th would be good this season. But I think we can do better than that now. And they're all doing a fantastic job.
I think the fact that we had one less man than Crystal Palace in the whole of the second half, and we still managed to score 2 goals and be by far the better team than them, is again credit to Dean Smith and the whole of the setup at Aston Villa, because these owners have come in, they've influenced the style of play, they brought Smith in, and even though we've, like you said, we sort of questioned his decisions in the past, especially in the Championship during that period, but now I think it's starting to come through, and these players are starting to flourish. And there's people like Courtney Hall and Anwar El Ghazi, who, in my opinion, were in the shop window, have come back into the side and have really proved their worth. So I think, like you said, I fully agree. It's down to Dean Smith, and credit to him and his coaching staff.
Absolutely, and again, you look at El Ghazi. I know with Mings' tweet originally. Obviously, there was a few that questioned whether that was the right thing to do, but I think it definitely was. He's been given a chance, he's taken it, and he's been fantastic. We're starting to see how goals we saw in the Championship, but at the top level. And when as a manager, you want selection headaches. That's what you want. You want people to give you something to think about, and he's doing that, and I'm delighted for him, really am, because he's a top player. We just need to see it on a more consistent level, and he's so far last 4 games he's doing that.
Chelsea tomorrow night. How do you think we'll do?
Well, if you'd asked me a month ago, I'd have said, well, I'm not so sure. But obviously, I watched the game last night at Chelsea-Arsenal, and Chelsea weren't that good at all, really. I'm a lot more confident going there tomorrow than I was a week or 2 ago. So I think we could pick up 3 points easily there. Probably like a 2-1, 2-0 win. We've got this run of clean sheets that they'll desperately want to keep hold of. Watkins really wants that goal. You can see it, and he's working so hard to get it. But I think we'll turn him over, you know. I really do.
I hope so too. I hope so. And you talked there about the journey that Dean Smith has had to go on in terms of developing and finalising the squad to be Premier League worthy and potentially challenge for Europa. I know that's a big shout, but potentially challenge for that if we continue this form. But for yourself and your family, you've had to go on a massive journey due to Tom's battle with leukemia. So bear in mind that's the topic of discussion today. When did that journey start for you, and what were your predominant emotions?
We go back to 2013. We were on holiday in Easter. We were at Devon Cliffs at a Haven Resort, and we just noticed while he was walking around, he just started limping. And we thought nothing of it. We thought, you know, he just fell over, because he'd been on, you know, all the bouncy castles and things like that while he was there. And then when we come home, he was, every night, he'd wake up during the night, the beds were soaked through with sweat, and, you know, we couldn't work this one out. It was a strange one, but there was no vomiting, there was no sort of temperature, there was nothing. And then it was the May Day bank holiday. We'd left it a week or two, and because I think Easter was quite late that year, and I went round to pick him up, because I've been playing golf on the May Day, and I went round to the in-laws to pick him up. And as I walked in, he was just sat on the sofa. He just didn't move. I said to my mother-in-law at the time, how's he been? And he said, well, for the last couple of hours, he hasn't moved. He hasn't sort of done anything. And I asked him how he was. And he just said, my legs don't work anymore. And instantly I'm thinking, well, this ain't right. Now, obviously, I'd been playing golf with the father-in-law, and he was in a separate car behind me. And whenever he walked through the door, he always used to, as he was 3-4, he'd always run over to him and give him a big hug. And I kind of said to myself, if he doesn't do that when he comes in, we need to go and get him checked out. So he walks in, doesn't move. So at this point then, I whip him up, and we go up to the hospital with him. And after spending 3 or 4 hours in A&E, they wanted to send us home, as they just thought it was viral. Now, as we found out going through the whole treatment process, leukemia can be easily passed off as a viral infection, because if you look at the signs and symptoms, they're all very, very similar, but there's a few sort of intricate things that you do to look at to get the diagnosis, and one of them being a blood test. Now, I'd refused to leave my local hospital at the time. I'll keep them nameless. But I refused to leave. I asked for a second opinion, and initially I wasn't given one. But it was only when I got a little bit loud that I managed to get one. And it was the second opinion that gave him a once over, and he said he's got an enlarged spleen, and that was the sort of the catalyst to get the blood test done. And then they found what they were looking for, and then he got transferred into the wonderful people at Birmingham Children's Hospital.
So as a parent then, because as a child when you grow up, you're not prepared for instances like this. So did you go into panic mode? How did you compose yourself to go through this period at the start?
At diagnosis, I'd kind of cheated a little bit in the sense of when they told us, I had time to think about it, purely because I went to chase blood test results the day we were told, and Tom's medical notes were actually open on the desk that I went up to, and they must have been having a meeting about it, because all the doctors were in a room just behind the desk, and there was no other kids in that bay at the time, so we knew they must have been talking about him, but his notes were open on the desk, and I sort of looked to my left and right, and I looked at his notes, and it actually said on there that they what they'd found. So I'd sort of found out before they'd actually told us, and they told us about half an hour, 40 minutes later, so I'd had time to collect my thoughts and think, right, they found it. So when they then did tell us, as I said, I had told my wife at the time, and again, she got upset beforehand, obviously, as a natural reaction. But by the time they told us 45 minutes later, we were both like, right, well, okay, let's deal with it. And one of the common things that we've had as parents is, if it happened to my children, I wouldn't know what to do. Your parental instinct kicks in. You deal with it. When your back's against the wall and you're backed into a corner, your natural instinct is to come out fighting. You have, as a parent, you have no other option, and that's what you do. So then, when this hospital transferred Tom and him to obviously to Birmingham Children's Hospital, who took over all his treatment, they were absolutely wonderful. The minute we walked through the door, he was carted away, straight in, lines in, treatment started within 20 minutes of us being there. It was about 1 o'clock in the morning we got transferred across, and they just took him right and just got going with it, and they've been magnificent from day one right up until last week when he had his checkup.
How was Tom feeling during this time as well? Because for him, it's such a peculiar environment to be in. And how did he cope with that? Did he show that? Did he portray these emotions to you?
When he was first diagnosed, he was 5. So he just sort of, he's at that age where he's starting to sort of understand sort of things. Of the Christmas he's had just before, it was probably the first Christmas he had where he understood who Santa Claus was and the whole sort of mystique around Christmas. And I'll never forget it, but one of the first things he'd asked us is, when we told him what he had and it was cancer, the first thing he said was, "Am I going to die?" And as parents, you go, "Well, no, you're not. We're at a hospital. We're going to get, they're going to sort it." He's like, "Oh, okay." And then he cracks on with it. But obviously, as he's grown up, obviously through the years since, over the last 7 years, we've never hid to the fact what he's had, what he's got. He knows what he's got. He understands what he's had and what he's been fighting. And I think for us, it's the right thing to do, because it's something that, as he gets older, it's something that he can relate to and maybe help others moving forward with it as well.
Do you believe that have you taught him these skills during a youngster, and how important is it for the future generations to be taught the value of being kind and being resilient in order to get to their best position in life?
I think particularly with the NHS, they, as we found out at the time, at that particular point, they got a bad rap, and it was very unfair. They basically saved our son's life, from his consultant, Jayashree Motwani, and all the lead clinics and physicians at the Birmingham Children's Hospital and on the cancer ward particularly, and that Waterfall House, they saved his life, and that's something that we've installed into him. They've done this for a reason, and you look at recently with COVID as well, with the frontline teams, working through it with no regard for their own health and well-beings to save the life of others. And as much as people harp on about, should we have private, should we do this, should we do that, without the NHS, Tom wouldn't be here today. And there's a lot of people in the world, particularly, that sort of think that it's free. I'll just go to hospital, they'll get it sorted. But that's not, it's the wrong attitude to have. These guys put themselves on the line to save the lives of others. And, it's something that Tom is more thankful of now, because he's been through the NHS system to make himself better. I think this year, particularly those that have never had sort of, if you've been to GP for a cough and a cold, things like that, you'll have your own sort of viewpoint of them. But for me, and it's been nice to, the clapping for the NHS was great. We've seen a part of the NHS that others won't have seen. But it's been nice to see them actually get recognised for it this year, for the hard work that they do. And I think that as I just hope now with Brexit being done, that the money can start being pumped into our NHS system to enable them to have better facilities, have better research facilities, and just give the nurses not only a better quality of life, but better facilities and just better hospitals to work with. We've seen obviously the great work that Birmingham Children's Hospital have done with the move to cancer ward. They moved away from the main building around the back to Waterfall House, and it's a fantastic facility that they have there, and it's going to benefit everybody moving forward. So no, it's been really good to see them finally getting recognition they deserve from the wider scope of people this year. It's been good.
I think the better question to ask you, though, is due to the fact that the NHS has been such an influential presence in your life for the past few years. when you say you've seen things that other people haven't seen, what moments of bravery, kindness, resilience have you seen from the nurses and doctors? You don't have to name them, etc. But what instances have you been a part of where that's really shown the core values of NHS?
There's one incident that Tom had that it's one I haven't really sort of shared with anybody particularly, but it sort of highlights and shows just sort of how strong-willed and natured these doctors are. His main doctor on the wards at the time is Dr. Matt, as we know him at. It was about 1 o'clock in the morning. It was my night in, and Tom's phosphate levels were really, really low because he just had quite a nasty round of chemo that day, and he needed a phosphate transfusion. So they called us in at 1 o'clock in the morning. Obviously, while I was at the hospital, they woke us up and dragged him into a sort of back room to make the start of it. So it was done away from, obviously, from the sort of his bay on the ward. But his cannula, which was obviously the line that goes in where they put the phosphate through it, had failed. It had collapsed. His blood vessels were so thin that it had just broke down, which is what causes the bruising. So they had another go in his left arm, couldn't find a vein. Had another go in his right arm, another one. Then went left elbow, couldn't get one. Right elbow, couldn't get one. Then they went on to his leg, left leg, couldn't get one. And at this point, it's 2:30 in the morning. Tom's screaming, he's five and a half. He's screaming his head off. What's going on? What's going on? Why needles this? Why that? I'm starting to panic a little bit. And these doctors, they're just cool as ice. It's like, look, it happens. We know what we're doing. It's fine. They then told us, look, if we can't get a line in, then we'll have to take him down to A&E, knock him out under anaesthetic, and put a cannula in his neck. That shown where it was just here on his neck, and then we can do it from there. But it was just like butter in a slice of toast to them. They were just so focused on it, and for me, it was. Not only were they keeping him calm, but they were keeping me calm. Because at this point, I've never seen anything like this, and it's something I can remember as if it happened yesterday. It's that vivid in my mind. Eventually, they got the line in without having to knock him out. And they got it in his right leg, I think, in the end. But it was just like, and then as we walked out, he said, right, what do we need to do next? There was no stopping. There was no break. There was no, right, I need to sit down after that. It was like, right, okay, got that. That's on go. Who do we need to go and see next? Just completely, it was just like a normal experience for them, and yet it was just incredible. And the end sort of funny side of it was on the one go that they had. I was holding Tom's sort of shoulders down, and I was underneath the doctor, and he's got they call it magic spray, which is basically anaesthetic spray. So it sort of numbs wherever it is so they don't feel the needle. And he shakes it and he sprays it, but rather than spray it on Tom, he sprays it on the back of my neck. So I was like, oh, sorry, Rich. And he said, that might be a bit cold. And he said, and then as we came back out, halfway, he's flicking the back of my neck. I'm like, I can't feel it. Checking. But this is like 1, 2 in the morning, and it's just like it's a normal shift for them. And it was one of the most incredible, keeping your cool. I mean, you can talk about, back to football, when the Villa players took the penalties against the Albion at the Hawthorns, keeping their cool and keeping calm under pressure and things like that. There is nothing that I've seen that was as cool as that. It was absolutely brilliant. And the NHS, as I said, they're wonderful.
Through instances like the one you described, I imagine your bond with Tom and your other family members really developed and really grew stronger. So what's your relationship like now with Tom, and how's that developed during his time battling through leukemia?
I think what has helped us sort of being obviously those first sort of 6-7 months, we're all a lot closer together, because obviously when you've got a child, and the jobs that my wife and myself work, we work different shifts, we work different times, so you rely on a bit of childcare, nurseries. You don't see each other as much as you probably would like to do, but you have a job to do, you have bills to pay, you got your mortgage to keep on top of, to keep a roof over your head. So that sort of element of Tom's treatment brought us close together as a family, for sure. I think in regards to Tom, I think he's grown up so far around adults, so he sort of has matured probably a lot quicker than other children maybe do his age as well, and that's primarily one of the reasons why he enjoys his football quite so much. He's so level-headed with it, and I think the football element as well, particularly, has been a really good thing for him, because it's given him an outlet away from the treatment, where he can just be himself, and be a kid, really. And that was the key thing through that part of the treatment. Into secondary school now, he's now going through obviously different changes. For 5-6 years time, he'll be able to learn how to drive a car and and get a job and buy me a beer, which I'm waiting for. But so he's now moving into a different part of his life. But that his sort of initial period from treatment through to now, Villa particularly has been a real inspiration and a real element of just sort of being a kid, really.
Did you ever question whether Tom would have a fulfilling future? And during the tough times during his battle with leukemia, what got you through that period?
What got me through was the hope that he would survive. I'll be brutally honest, there are times where you think, is he going to die? Is the cancer going to overtake his body and eventually end his life? So I think the key thing for me was to just make sure that just enjoy what time you had, because you don't know what's going to happen. But as sort of the treatment went on and he reacted to that and it started to work, then it's hard to plan, because you don't know where you're going to be. So we just sort of was taking it day at a time, and it's kind of sort of rejigged my own life, because I was a very planner. I would have everything planned out every day, but now it's just, whatever happens today, I'll worry about tomorrow. It's took me a long time to think like that, but we get there now with it. So I think with Tom, he's in a position now where he's got his life ahead of him, and we're sort of 7 months away from having his medical file completely signed off and being cured, and then the world's his oyster again. So it's just, we just take it a day at a time. Even now, until he's signed off, we're not technically out of the woods, but we appreciate we're one of the lucky ones. We saw people on children on the ward, that the cancer and the neuroblastoma ward, they're all together. We've unfortunately we got friendly with families and children where they lost their lives, and there are children out there that are not so lucky as Tom. I mean, I used sort of that they're having sort of a much harder battle with it than Tom. And when you look at like Sir Josh Nicholson, there's another child similar age to Tom that's got leukemia, that's sort of running through sort of the Villa View, and Dan Bardell has done stuff with him and with his mum Victoria and things over in Solihull. It's great to see him finally starting to win the battle, but he's had a much harder battle than Tom, because of the severity of it. So it makes we know we've been one of the lucky ones, and as I said, with Josh, we're fortunate to know him and the family, and obviously I have nothing but respect for them all. It makes us feel, it just reminds us that there are others out there, and the family's a top lad, and he's a top lad, and the family's great, and obviously I wish them all the best as well.
Talked about the importance of hobbies and how they can distract you and the family and Tom away from the severity of leukemia. So, for example, the Villa View, I've had the pleasure to talk to you on the fan cams, etc. How important has your relationship been with them? Just talk about the overall experience. How did you enter the Villa View? How did you get to know Dan Bardell, and how's the relationship like with him and the Villa View, and how important has that been in your life?
The Villa View sort of came about from a tweet that I did back in it was the end of August 2015. It was a photo of Tom that I put out on Twitter, and it was just basically, he was just leaning over, obviously, the Trinity Road stand at the front. I just took it from behind, and he told me sort of that day that he loves going to the football. And his words were, because no one else knows what I've got, which for a 7-year-old I thought was quite deep. In a sense, you can speak to others around there, and they don't know he's got cancer. They don't know what sort of, he's just another kid, and he can sort of be himself. And to have a child that at that age that thinks that, it was great that he knows he's got an escape where he can just feel normal. And for him, it happened to be Villa Park. And I put that tweet out, and it was just a photo of him, and it's just for 90 minutes. I can't remember what the wording was, but it's something along the lines of, for 90 minutes he enjoys the game, forgets about the leukemia. And I think I've just hashtagged ABFC in it. I didn't put it out to anyone else. It didn't go to any players. No likes, no retweets. I didn't ask for any of that. I think I had about 300 followers, I think. And it went viral. It went absolutely crazy. Matt Kendrick at the Mail got in touch, and he was top class. He was wonderful. And then once the Lad Bible retweeted it, that was when it then went silly. I mean, one of my favourite ones was Serie A retweeted it, and they sort of translated it into Italian and put their logo on it, and that was wonderful. And then Dan had sort of picked that up and got in touch and said, look, would Tom like to come on the Villa View? I think his debut was Boxing Day at Burton. I think it was first season in the chat. I think that was his. And and then obviously Dan asked, so we saw Matt Lynch as well, and for me with the Villa View, I don't think they realise it, and I have told Dan a few times, and Matt and Dan Rollinson as well, that they have been a major influence in his sort of growing up and sort of the personality that he has now, because he was very shy and very reserved up until that point. But they got him in, they asked him questions, and put him like, and then he just slowly started to come out of his shell. It was almost like, well, what I think actually means something to somebody. They're actually interested in what I've got to say. And then as that, he's just sort of grown and grown and grown and grown. I mean, I didn't go on the Villa View for the best part of 6-7 months. I was too scared to get in front of the camera. I just couldn't do it. And then I eventually got roped on it. And then once I'm on it, I couldn't get off it, unfortunately, for everybody that watched it. But I've got a lot to be thankful for the Villa View. They have been a huge influence on the person Tom is today, because he feels confident and comfortable enough to speak to them about football, and the love and support that not only that we've had from, as I said, Dan Rollinson, Matt Lynch, Chris Dolan, but in particular Dan Bardell. The guy is, I say the words, an absolute legend. I think I don't use the term lightly either. He is. I haven't got enough wonderful things to say about him and what he's done, for him. And again, and I put the football club in as well. Jack sort of got in touch, through his dad as well, Kevin and Kevan as well. They've been brilliant. And it's been such a humbling experience to see the sort of the Villa community sort of rally around him and sort of see the messages and stuff we get, sort of on Twitter. It's a shame, obviously, I'm not on the original account it was on. Unfortunately, you do have the odd troll here and there. I ended up having to switch, but that's social media currently as it stands. But I have seen the better side of social media and what it's done for us as a family, and for Tom. It's been magical, really.
I was going to say, because the element of talking as well really comes into the whole topic about mental health. And I imagine that through talking to the guys at the Villa View, to the camera, to the Villa fans, etc., through the medium of YouTube and videos, etc., that's really helped to develop you guys as people and really distract you. Like I said, I'll go back to it away from the severity of leukemia. So whether that's social media, talking like Twitter, etc., or YouTube, regarding the negative stuff, how does that affect you at all?
It's affected me more than it has probably Tom, to be fair. I mean, I struggle to, some of the videos you've done already in regards to mental health and the talks that I've seen with it. I'm so happy it's out there now as a proper illness. It's funny because when Tom had finished all of his treatment in 2016, start of 2017, I struggled to adapt back to what would be classed as a normal way of life. I really, really struggled with that. The wife and Tom took to it like a duck to water, but you got so structured and routined for the best part of 3 years to have that just literally, it wasn't phased out, it just stopped. It's just random things from Calpol, for example, say, we couldn't give him that at home. If his temperature hit 38 degrees, which to me and you is a mild fever, for him, he had to go to hospital. That stopped. And for me, I struggled to process that and deal with that to the point in October last year, I got diagnosed with complex PTSD. I just had a complete meltdown at work. To the point where I had to get help, and I had some therapy sessions at the back end of last year, the start of this year, and as I said, they've been great. They've really helped. I still have my bad days. There's still that part of me that is still a little bit negative and a bit anxious, but the techniques that they give you to help process that and work towards a better way of thinking and a stronger way of thinking are fantastic. And again, harks back to the NHS where they've helped Tom, they're now helping me, and I'm in a good place at the moment. Everything is okay. As I said, I still have my bad days. The people that I'm around and at work will testify that. But again, my employees have been brilliant. My family's been brilliant, and as I said, it's just working. Just keep working every day.
I think you talking about this now that will really help other families that are going through these certain instances, and I really commend you for talking about it. But for other families, then, what advice would you give them to help them function during this time? Because, like you said, again, have a really harmful impact on your physical health, your mental health, etc. But what advice would you give to them for families who have got loved ones who have leukemia or any other form of disease, etc., or are spending lots of times in hospitals? What advice would you give them to help them get through this period?
I think the key mistake I made was not speaking out earlier. I think you can get into a point where you just literally, all I did was sponge up everything, because everybody had an opinion on Tom's treatment. What they were doing, was it correct? Should they be doing that? Shouldn't they be doing that? What do you think about this? What do you think about that? And you end up trying to please everybody, but trying to keep the peace. But say, okay, well, look at that, and it gets to a point where the brain it sponges everything up. You imagine a sponge full of water, then at a point it can't hold them all, and then it just breaks. And I think that the best advice that I can give anybody is if you speak up. There's people out there that will listen. You've got Mind, you've got your GPs, you've got there's plenty of support networks out there, which is why I'm delighted. It's now people are being more open and honest about it with it. I'm 37. So I was just sort of growing up in that sort of era where mental health wasn't a thing, but then it was. You sort of kind of grow. If you go a bit older than that, it's sort of mental health. Snap out of it. You're all right. You get down the gym, you'll be all right. And it's not as easy as that. You've got to be. If you want to get better, you've got to be willing to, like in anything, admit to yourself there's an issue and speak to people. But in regards to sort of the families where, one of the things that we've done as well is try to raise awareness with leukemia. We've raised money for Cure Leukemia. We've raised, I think, the best part of £12,000 for Birmingham Children's Hospital since 2014, just to raise awareness for leukemia. But don't be afraid. If you don't think that your child is right, the old mama knows best theory, as we found out, it works. The doctors are brilliant, but they can only go with what they see. If you believe that this isn't right, your child is not right, don't be afraid to push them, because if you push them, they will do something. If you just go, okay, and then go home and something happens, that's when the issue starts. So my advice would be, you know your child, you know your children, you know yourself, you know when something isn't right. So don't be afraid to ask.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years' time after going on this journey, this treacherous journey, this journey full of heartache, pain, etc.? But you've come out of it in the end, and there's still been problems. But that battle for specifically Tom with leukemia has ended. Where do you see yourself and the family in 5 years' time?
Sat in a beer garden discussing it, if I'm being honest with you. I'd like to think that, in 5 years' time, Tom will be, 17, coming on 18. He'll be an adult. He will, once legally, the hospital and the NHS can enforce scans and treatments until he's 18 years of age. Once he's an adult, it's down to him. And for me, I just all together, and just sitting down and looking back at it, going, "Cool, do you remember what we went through with that?" And just being open and honest about it. And to have Tom here today is, there were times during the treatment where I didn't think I would have a child now, let alone would think about where I would be in 5 years' time. So, it's made me sort of enjoy life for what it is, and just sort of, just enjoy life for what it is. We only get one chance at this, and it's took me 36 years to realise that. But you just have to enjoy it. But ultimately, at the same time, as I said with anything, if you don't think if there's something not right, whether it's yourself, whether it's family, friends, speak up and speak about it.
Tom, you've undertook a really hard, treacherous battle with leukemia. You've gone through different stages in your life. But most importantly, because I was talking to your dad and you said you were around the age of 5 when this battle started. Do you remember a lot about that, where it started?
Not really, no. I don't really remember having it until my parents, told me direct. I didn't know how bad it was at the time. I thought it was just like, one of these diseases that, a few medicines and it will go. Until I actually found out how bad it was. I was getting into hospital every week and it was just getting really bad. To the point I was missing school and everything.
I was going to say, because that drastic change of environment from being in school and being around with your friends to now being in hospitals frequently. How did you find changing in that way? How did you find adapting to the hospitalised environment? How did you find adapting to hospital?
Adapting to hospital was really hard because, there was a lot of other kids as well who were having leukemia. So I didn't really find it quite easy to fit in, really. But I found a way and I made a few friends who I still catch up with to this day.
Like you said, he didn't understand the gravity of leukemia at first. He didn't understand how serious it was. But when you did so, how did you cope then? Did you go into panic mode? How did you compose yourself to go through with the treatment and ultimately get better?
If I'm being brutally honest, it kind of went into panic mode because, it's just that sense of, if it goes wrong, what happens. It was just that set of panic mode and I just went with everything. And, if anything, did went wrong, I knew what would happen and it's just really gutted. So I just had to do it, really.
Bear in mind that during this period, we've really appreciated doctors and nurses and people a part of the NHS. What's your relationship been with them during your battle with leukemia, and how much do you appreciate them?
I appreciate them really well because, I think without them, I wouldn't be here today. And it's like my dad pretty much says to all his friends, I probably spent most time around adults in my life than I have children. So I just really appreciate them for all their work they did, and I'm really grateful.
Has there been any individual specifically, you don't have to name them, but has there been any experiences where you doctors and nurses have really shown kindness and bravery towards you?
Yeah, there was a lot of nurses who helped me with my battle with leukemia, especially one of my doctors. She was really nice and you know, she was really kind and helped me get through it pretty easier than if she wasn't there.
So when the battle ended, when you finally didn't have to do treatment and you were on the road to recovery, how much better did you feel? How did you feel inside during that moment?
I felt really relieved to know that that I was safe now and that leukemia was about to go away, and I was just feeling really happy, and I could catch up with school and hopefully make some new friends as well. So I was really, really happy to find the news that I was in remission.
On the road to recovery during that battle with leukemia, did you ever picture yourself getting to this moment today?
No, I didn't picture for 1 second that I'd be sitting here speaking to you. I didn't expect any of it, to be honest.
What's your relationship been like with your dad then and your family? Because I imagine that, bear in mind, you said that you've been around adults for the majority of your life. What's your relationship like with your dad and your family members during that period with your battle with leukemia? And what's it like now?
During that leukemia period, I only ever saw like my mum, my mum, dad, nan, and granddad. I didn't really see like anyone else. So obviously, then after when I was 3, I met a lot of other family members that I couldn't meet because I was obviously in hospital. So I got to meet a lot more family members.
And I think that as the years are progressing, the topic of mental health is really becoming more prevalent in society. So for yourself, how important was it to talk to your dad, your mom, your nan, your granddad in order to have a better mindset and a better mind during that period?
Really important because you know, because I don't really know, to be honest. It was just a really different experience for me, and I feel like I feel really happy now that there's a lot more attention towards mental health than there was before. I think it wears more, oh, for God's sake, I can't say, sorry. Raises more awareness for like people with leukemia and cancer. So I'm really happy.
So for kids and family members who are going through the battle with leukemia or cancer, etc., what advice would you give to them in order to help them get through that period?
Be strong and always believe in yourselves, and hopefully it will go away.
Tom, thank you very much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Liam. Have a good one.
As you know, we do fan cams all season. We've been doing fan cams for the last 3 years. So we've got a special award for someone who's grown very special to the channel, someone who we all love, and we're all very proud of how far he's come in his life and how well he's done. He's obviously had some issues in his life with health, and he's just a great young lad. So Tom, do you want to come up on the stage? Got you a little trophy. Fan camera of the season. Well done, Mike. Give him the mic, give him the mic, give him the mic. So is there anything you want to say to the Villa fans?
Up the Villa.
Up the Villa.
Why didn't we just get him on? That would have been much better.